Welcome back to Frontline Macroanalysis TV. Today, we are diving into one of the most dramatic political uprisings in South Asia in recent years, the mass protests in Nepal that toppled the government in 2025. This is urgent, and all other politicians in the world should pay attention because they can be next. As a good informed citizen, ask yourself, does my government representative delivering to his promises, and is he or she is representing my interests as I expect it? If yes, great. But if your answer is no, then you know what to do. For weeks, the streets of Kathmandu and other major cities were filled with young people, mostly Gen Z, who defied curfews, faced police crackdowns, and demanded change. The spark? A controversial social media ban. But that was just the beginning. Behind the protests were deep frustrations, corruption, unemployment, instability, failed promises, and fears of rising authoritarianism. In this video, we'll break down 10 major reasons that pushed Nepali citizens, especially its youth, to the point where they forced their leaders out of power. Stick with me until the end, because some of these reasons reveal bigger lessons about democracy, not just in Nepal but around the world. Reason 1. The social media ban. The immediate trigger for the protests was the government's decision to block 26 popular social media platforms, including Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. The official justification? These platforms had failed to register under Nepal's new laws. But for the public, it felt like a direct attack on freedom of speech. Imagine a country where the majority of young people connect, learn, work, and even earn through social media. Overnight, all those channels were gone. Content creators lost income, families abroad couldn't connect easily, and activists lost their voice. For Gen Z, who had grown up online, this wasn't just policy, it was personal. The ban became the perfect lightning rod for wider frustrations that had been brewing for years. Reason 2. Corruption and nepotism. Corruption has long been a sore point in Nepali politics. Over the years, scandals, from shady procurement deals to misuse of public funds, have eroded trust. One particularly controversial deal was the Airbus aircraft procurement scandal, which many saw as a symbol of how powerful people enrich themselves while ordinary citizens struggle. The problem isn't just financial loss. Corruption makes citizens feel like the system is rigged, where connections and nepotism matter more than merit or service. For young people trying to build a future, this was a deal-breaker. They looked at leaders and saw greed, not guidance. Reason 3. Dysfunctional politics and instability. Since Nepal became a republic in 2008, political instability has been the norm. In less than 2 decades, the country has gone through more than a dozen governments. Coalitions form and collapse. Leaders swap places, promises are made and forgotten, and little progress is seen on the ground. For ordinary people, this revolving door of politics meant no accountability and no long-term vision. Gen Z protesters were quick to point out, democracy isn't just about holding elections, it's about delivering results. Reason 4. Economic distress and youth unemployment. Let's talk about the economy. Nepal's economy is heavily dependent on remittances from workers abroad, contributing almost 25% of the GDP. That's huge. But it also reveals a structural weakness. Nepal isn't generating enough domestic jobs. For young graduates, opportunities are scarce. Many see migration as their only option. Add to that rising inflation and a cost of living crisis, and frustration grows. The protests tapped into this despair. Young people don't just want to survive, they want a future with dignity and opportunity in their own country. Reason 5. Generational discontent. This movement was uniquely Gen Z. Unlike previous protests led by unions, political parties, or student wings, This uprising had no single leader. Instead, it was decentralized, organized through hashtags, live streams, and viral videos. Gen Z didn't trust traditional political structures. They grew up in a digital world, saw global movements unfold online, and realized they could do the same. This generational clash, between the old guard clinging to power and the youth demanding change, was one of the defining features of the protests. Reason 6. Fear of authoritarianism. The social media ban wasn't seen in isolation. Protesters connected it to a larger trend: the government silencing dissent. There had already been concerns about shrinking media freedom, internet blackouts during sensitive times, and excessive police force against demonstrators. Many feared Nepal was sliding away from democracy toward authoritarian control. The more the government tried to control the narrative, the angrier the youth became. Reason 7. Trigger incidents and police brutality. Every protest movement has tipping points. In Nepal's case, one was the death of protesters during clashes with security forces. When live videos surfaced showing police firing tear gas and using live ammunition, outrage spread like wildfire. Instead of intimidating people into silence, these incidents fueled more anger. Families of victims joined protests. Sympathy grew nationwide. What began as anger over social media bans turned into a fight for justice and dignity. Reason 8. Growing pro-monarchy sentiment. Surprisingly, amid the chaos, some protesters began calling for the return of the monarchy. Now, not everyone wanted this, but the sentiment revealed just how disillusioned people had become with the current republic system. For many, the monarchy symbolized stability, whether or not that was accurate. This doesn't mean Nepal will restore the king, but it shows that when democratic institutions fail repeatedly, people may start longing for alternatives, even ones they previously rejected. Reason 9. Weak economic structures. We touched on youth unemployment earlier, but there's a deeper issue: Nepal's over-reliance on remittances. While remittances provide foreign currency and keep families afloat, they don't build infrastructure, industries, or innovation inside the country. This hollowed-out economy left Nepal vulnerable. People began asking, why should our brightest minds have to leave? Why can't leaders fix things at home? The protests gave voice to these questions. Reason 10. Broken promises and governance failure. Finally, perhaps the most powerful reason: a loss of trust. For years, politicians promised development, jobs, better infrastructure, social justice. Yet many villages still lack reliable roads, hospitals remain underfunded, and inequality is growing. The gap between what was promised and what was delivered became too wide. The protests were less about a single ban and more about a broken contract between the people and their leaders. Conclusion. So, let's sum it up. The protests that toppled Nepal's government weren't just about social media. They were about corruption, unemployment, unstable politics, authoritarian fears, and a generation that had simply had enough. In the end, Gen Z in Nepal proved that when people organize, even without formal leaders, they can bring down governments. But here's the bigger question: what comes next? Removing a leader is one thing. Building a system that actually delivers is another. Nepal now faces the challenge of turning protest energy into sustainable reform. And that's a lesson the whole world should pay attention to. As we close, it's important to step back and ask, what can politicians around the world learn from what just happened in Nepal? The answer is clear. This wasn't just about Kathmandu or a single government. It was about a generation saying enough is enough. And their message carries lessons for leaders everywhere. Lesson 1. Never underestimate the youth. Gen Z is not a silent generation. They are connected, informed, and mobilized like no generation before them. From TikTok videos to live streams, they don't wait for political parties to lead, they create their own movements. Politicians who ignore their voice do so at their own risk. Lesson 2. Freedom of speech is sacred. When Nepal's government tried to silence its people by banning social media, The exact opposite happened. It fueled the fire. Around the world, leaders should understand, censorship doesn't create stability, it creates resistance. Lesson 3. Corruption destroys legitimacy. No system can survive when citizens believe their leaders are looting the nation. Corruption isn't just about money, it's about trust. And when trust collapses, even the strongest governments fall. Lesson 4. Democracy must deliver, not just exist. Elections alone are not enough. People want jobs, security, dignity. If democracy becomes a cycle of broken promises and endless instability, citizens will look for alternatives, even monarchies or authoritarian rule. Lesson 5. Listen before it's too late. Perhaps the most important lesson: listen. Protests rarely explode overnight. They build over years of frustration. Leaders who engage early, who respond to grievances honestly, can reform peacefully. Those who ignore or suppress end up being toppled. So the lesson from Nepal is simple but profound. Power without trust is fragile. Governments that fail to respect freedoms, deliver on promises, and create hope for the future will not stand for long. This isn't just Nepal's story, it's a warning to politicians everywhere. Because in the end, the people, especially the youth, will always have the last word. Thank you for watching Frontline Macroanalysis TV, where we break down the biggest global events with depth, clarity, and context. If you found this analysis on Nepal's protests insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hit the bell icon so you never miss our frontline coverage of politics, economics, and world affairs. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Nepal's Gen Z movement will bring real reform, or will history repeat itself? This is Frontline Macroanalysis TV, bringing you the stories that shape nations and futures. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and stay on the front line.